Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce to you past District Governor Randy Lickey. He's served in District 7600 in the Tidewater area of Virginia. Today, he's going to present to us information about the Polio Eradication Initiative. And he is currently serving as the District 7710 PolioPlus Chair. And next year, he will serve as the Peace Fellow Host Area Coordinator. So let's welcome Randy Lickey.
Well, thank you, Marie. Am I unmuted? I think so. Well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to speak. As we all know, the effort to eradicate polio is Rotary's #1 global initiative, and has been for many years. Our efforts started in earnest back in the late 70s. At that time, there was a polio outbreak in the Philippines, and Rotarians in the Philippines came forward and asked the foundation for what was then called a Health, Hunger, and Humanities Grant, which was issued in the amount of $68,000. And Rotary supported the efforts to immunize the children in the Philippines, and it was successful. We were able to eliminate polio in the Philippines. On the heels of that success, Rotary leaders gathered, and doing what Rotary leaders do, they said, well, gee, if we can eradicate polio in the Philippines, why don't we do it all around the world, and we'll do it in our spare time. And thus started our efforts to eradicate this dreaded disease. In 1985, Rotary announced that it was going to seek to raise $120 million over a 3-year period. Thinking that $120 million was going to be enough to successfully push forward our campaign to eradicate polio. And at that time, they went to the World Health Organization and said, hey, we've got this great idea. We want to eradicate polio. How about you all joining with us in this effort? And we're going to raise some money. And the World Health Organization said, you guys are crazy. Rotary's never done anything on this scale. We don't think you can do it. We don't think you can raise the money. So in 1988, Rotary announced at its international convention in Philadelphia that we had raised not $120 million, but $248 million. At that time, the World Health Organization and UNICEF and others looked at Rotary and said, we still think you're crazy, but you're crazy and you got money, and yes, we'll join with you in your efforts. And at that time, what was formed was the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. The 4 founding partners were Rotary, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the CDC. More recently, over the years, we all talk about the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation having joined us as a partner, and our most recent partner was Gavi, which is a vaccine alliance. But it's through the Global Polio Eradication Initiative that all of our efforts are channeled and carried out in our efforts to eradicate polio. Rotary, while many say is the conscience of the organization, we don't have the health expertise. That's WHO and UNICEF. So through this organization and through this partnership, working with nations around the world, we have now for more than 35 years pursued our dream of eradicating polio. You can see numbers on the screen. Many of these are already outdated. The number of children we've vaccinated is well over 3 billion. the amount invested is well over the numbers you see here. But I think it's important that we understand this is the world's biggest ever public-private partnership in the public health area. And Rotary was the brainchild. We started it. I always like to level set. This is what the world looked like, and we measure everything against 1988 when the Global Polio Eradication Initiative was formed. And polio was endemic in 125 countries, and we were experiencing 350,000 cases a year, each and every year in those countries. Clearly in the US, Canada, other nations, we had not seen a case of polio in a long time, but polio was ravaging, as you can see, a vast amount of the world. Today, where are we in terms of globally? We're down to just 2 countries being endemic. Everybody knows that's Afghanistan and Pakistan, but that's down from 125 in 1988, and that's in itself a remarkable accomplishment. You can see on this map, red dots indicate polio caused by the wild virus. We also are fighting what's called circulating vaccine-derived cases. Because we have to use the oral vaccine in our efforts, you cannot carry out the mass immunizations in countries in Afghanistan and Pakistan or in many parts of Africa unless you use the oral polio vaccine. Injectable is just not practical. And the oral vaccine is made from a very attenuated, very weakened live virus. The result being that in very, very small number of cases, you can begin to have a virus that mutates and over several years can develop to a point where it can circulate just like the wild virus. And that happens in Africa in particular, in areas that don't keep up their vaccination rates at a high enough level, and you'll see outbreaks. And these are caused not by a circulating wild virus, but because of the circulating vaccine-derived virus. And we have to go back in, and we do. We're continuing normal immunization in those countries, but then you have to do a blitz, and you get back in and you do mass immunizations to try to stamp out that outbreak where it occurs. The good news is that over the last several years, there have been efforts to develop a new version of the vaccine that is more stable. And just within this last year, the WHO issued an emergency use order that allowed what's called the novel type 2 polio vaccine to be used, and it has now been cleared to be distributed widely in these countries. It is a much more stable vaccine, and the chances of it mutating are significantly less. And so our hope is that we've turned the corner on that front as well. So where are we today? Today, the best numbers I have to tell you is that we're at 4 cases worldwide caused by the wild virus, 3 in Afghanistan, 1 in Pakistan. We had gone 10 months where it was just 1 reported case in Afghanistan and 1 in Pakistan. Those cases having occurred in January of this year. But just this past week, a report came out of Afghanistan of 2 additional cases that have been recorded. So that brings us to 4. That is still a remarkable number. Circulating vaccine-derived cases, we're at 448 thus far this year. You can compare our 2021, we're getting close to the end of the year, and you can see that last year we ended 2020 with 120 cases from the wild virus versus 4 and over 1,100 circulating vaccine-derived cases versus about half that number this year. So we are making progress on each of those fronts, and that is very good news. So I always tell people, as strange as everyone's workplace has been during COVID, my guess is that even in your normal, whatever that was, work time, your workplace didn't look much like this. The picture on the left is one I snapped through the windshield of the van that was taking one of our NID teams that I've taken to Pakistan. This is on the outskirts of Karachi, and it's a neighborhood, if you want to call it that, a community that we were going into to do door-to-door vaccinations. And on the right is a picture from actually my 2019 team, and you can see past District Governor Shafi's back to us, and actually in the lower right, that's Donna Peffley, who was District Governor at the time, her head, and that we were in the neighborhood that we were working at that time, going with health workers to do door-to-door. These are I could probably find pictures and show pictures of even far more challenging areas, but this just gives a glimpse of the kinds of communities, the areas you have to work in to eradicate this disease. And these are the people who are truly our heroes. They're the ones who are on the front lines each and every day, carrying out our efforts to eradicate this disease. The pictures on the top are ones that we took, and actually the lower bottom left as well, but when we were in Pakistan. And so the upper left shows young women, and that's primarily the health workers who are carrying out the door-to-door vaccination efforts, certainly in Pakistan, and it's going to have to be that way in Afghanistan if we're going to have success. These are Muslim countries. Men are not allowed to enter the homes unless they're invited by the man of the home. Typically, when the knock on the door happens and a health worker's there, the man may not be in the home. It's the woman who answers, the mother. And these women who are working generally live in the same communities. They work hard to build trust with the mothers in the communities so that they'll allow their children to be vaccinated. They're being paid very little, usually far less than $3 a day. But they're working each and every day to help carry out our mission to eradicate this disease. In the middle picture at the top and on the right, you'll see, and even the bottom left, you see men polio workers. These are workers who are working at train stations, bus stops, other areas, not doing door-to-door. And I'll speak a little more about those efforts in a minute. The bottom two pictures in the middle and lower right, I unabashedly stole off of the internet, but it just gives you the idea that if you're going to have an effort to try to reach every last child, you have to go to some pretty extreme at times methods, and these are the health workers that are making those efforts on our behalf. So when we talk about community-based door-to-door immunizations in Pakistan and now Afghanistan, generally speaking, there are 4 what are called national immunization days, activities that are conducted through the year. And during those weeks, really, days, There's a blitz across the entire country, and the effort is to immunize all children under age 5. So in Pakistan, as an example, the target is to immunize 50 million children across the country of Pakistan during that week. And other efforts are going on throughout the year, but that's the blitz. In between those 4 efforts, which are generally quarterly, but not always, there could be what are called sub-immunization or subnational immunization. So you'll go into areas that are particularly at risk, and if there are outbreaks, you certainly go hard to immunize in those areas. But you're really looking for high-risk communities where you haven't succeeded in getting full vaccination rates during the national immunization days. So these are just some pictures of from both years that I've been to Pakistan. And you see in the upper left, we're in front of a sign that's called the Pakistan Rotary Resource Center. Rotary has invested in building these resource centers or leasing spaces and creating these resource centers in a number of high-risk communities. And it gives a place for the health workers to base out of, to have a bathroom, to come back and where they can eat, where they can record their notes at the end of the day. It's a safe place for them to be. But it also provides a space where other healthcare services can be delivered out of. And that's really critical in developing trust within the community that we're there to help them through their entire health needs and support their other needs, not just banging on their door 4 times a year saying, can we immunize your child against polio? The bottom right, you see the children holding up their pinkies that are all painted purple to show that they had been vaccinated during this campaign. My first year in Pakistan opened my eyes to other efforts that we don't talk about as much. But in Pakistan and Afghanistan, most people don't have cars. The vast majority of the population move by either bus or train if they're moving through the country. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, there are what are called permanent transit posts, or PTPs, they call them, that are set up on all of the major highways in Pakistan. And health workers are there. They're usually close to, in fact, always close to Army checkpoints that are set up on those highways. And every bus transiting those highways stops, and it's boarded by 2 health workers. Those health workers check to see if there are children on the bus. If so, have they been vaccinated or not? If not, unless the parent adamantly refuses, they vaccinate those children there on the bus. You see, we're standing in front of what looks like a cargo container. Well, that's what it was. It's had, this one's pretty nice. It's had a couple of windows cut into it. Most that I've been around have not. But this is the only shelter that those health workers have. And in Karachi in particular, where this was, temperatures in their summer can get to 120 degrees Fahrenheit or more. That's why I don't go in the summers. It is a challenging condition. Plus, as we all know, we have to keep our vaccine cold from the time it's manufactured until it's delivered into the mouth of the child. There's a solar-powered refrigerator, small one, in there to keep the vaccine cold. And then you see the coolers that they're all proudly displaying with our End Polio Now emblem on them. And they carry the vaccines in those coolers. And when they find a child to be immunized, that's when you pull the vial out and put those 2 drops in their mouths. You can see Donna Peffley in the upper right actually vaccinating a child on a bus that she boarded with some of the health workers. The same thing happens at rail stations. You can see in the lower pictures, there are kiosks set up at the front of those. Those types of kiosks are also in airports and some other public venues. At the rail stations, there are health workers that work the platforms throughout the day. Plus, every train that leaves a station is boarded by 2 health workers. They work the cars of that train until they get to the next stop. They get off there, they get the returning train, and they work those cars until they get back. And this is happening every day, every hour of every day. And that's what it takes to defeat a disease like polio. The logistics and the infrastructure that's been built up over the years is incredible. So I've already touched on this, but it is extremely important that in Afghanistan, we all know about the upheavals, we all know about the challenges. During the past several years in the areas that the Taliban controlled, health workers were not allowed to go door to door. That was simply not going to happen. The Taliban refused to allow it, in part because they were afraid that there were spies going to the doors, not health workers, and that it wasn't a genuine effort. That was their view. Now that the Taliban's in control, they have agreed with WHO and UNICEF to allow, and in fact have allowed, door-to-door vaccination campaigns to restart. It began on the 8th of November this month. That has occurred, and we've begun reaching areas of the country that were simply off limits to us previously. A second nationwide campaign is going to take place in December, which will be coordinated with an NID effort in Pakistan. And this is extremely important. The border between Afghanistan and Pakistan is virtually non-existent. People move back and forth across that border all the time. If we're going to successfully eradicate the wild virus in these last 2 countries, we've got to do it in a coordinated campaign. And you have a very transient society. People move around all the time. So this effort to go door to door, as well as to set up PTPs, the permanent transit post at border crossings, all of that as an integrated effort is what's going to allow us to achieve our end goal. The Taliban has also said they will allow women health workers to participate in the door-to-door, which, as I've mentioned before, is critical. They're the ones with the trust for mothers to allow their children to be vaccinated. I believe, although I don't have a full detailed report from the November campaign, but I believe that women health workers were involved, and it's clear that the Taliban did provide security for our health workers. All of that's key. I put this in to my presentation every time because if we're going to defeat polio, vaccinations alone, vaccinations are the big driver, but you've got to also help these communities solve their sanitation and water issues. In many of these high-risk communities, there's no public infrastructure. There is no public water. There is no sewerage system. They are either drinking and getting in very dirty, unhealthy water, or there will be fairly unscrupulous folks that will go into these communities with tanker trucks loaded with what they call potable water, which may or may not be, that they'll sell at exorbitant rates. So when we were in Pakistan the first time, we saw a Rotary-sponsored water filtration system. A bore well had been drilled, and a reverse osmosis, in that case, solar powered water filtration system had been put into this community, and we were virtually tackled almost by the people in that community. They wanted to thank us. They saw Rotary emblems on our shirt. They knew Rotary had brought clean water to them. I say that then District Governor Donna Pefley has a new best friend in Pakistan. This woman would just not stop thanking her, wanting to hug her, to say thank you for the water. We were so impressed. We asked more about this. We asked about the needs. In fact, WHO had identified at that time about 40 high-risk locations where this type of water filtration systems were needed. So when we came back, we raised $15,000 thinking we would be able to build one. Our friends in Pakistan actually leveraged that 15,000 and built three. And when I returned in 2020, we inaugurated those three. And yes, I can attest that the water is safe to drink because I drank it at each of those inaugural events at every filtration system that was operating. And as far as I know, I'm still okay. But this is critical. It helps not only with polio, but many other waterborne diseases. That is the largest killer of children under 5 are waterborne illnesses. It also builds trust in the communities. They see that Rotary is not just banging on their door for polio, that we're really trying to help them live better lives all around. And that trust is immeasurable and also helping to carry out our polio immunization activities. So as I say, because of Rotary, because of you, because of all of us, these children have hope that they will not have to suffer this crippling and at times deadly disease. And so what can you do? I'd be happy to have you consider joining me on a future NID trip. There are others that go other places. I know that past District Governor Marie and David have been to India. I go to Pakistan. I've got friends there now. But please give. And remember that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation matches every dollar we give 2 for 1. So your dollar turns into 3. Our goal is in our district, every Rotarian give at least $40. I usually ask that you consider giving at least $50. And if you give at the $100 level, we'll give you a nice pin and make you a member of our PolioPlus Society. But whatever you can give, this is in addition to your annual fund gift. We can't stop that, but we have to support polio. Rotary has committed to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative that we will provide in conjunction with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, $150 million a year, every year until we succeed in this effort. That means Rotarians have to raise $50 million. That'll be matched by $100 million from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to get that 150. That is our commitment. We have to make that happen. So with that, I thank you, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Randy. This always makes me proud to be a Rotarian, but I needed tissues this morning. Thank you. Very moving presentation to see the work that Rotary does that does change lives in very meaningful ways.
It's an incredible effort.
Well, I'm going to stop the recording and thank you very
Perfect.
much. And then we'll have a little conversation on the side here. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure. No, happy to do it. I can close out.